What happened when an undercover CEO walked into his own eco-friendly home decor empire and discovered the toxic roots choking its growth? Hello, amazing listeners. Today's story takes us inside eco-style living, where Ethan Clark, the founder and CEO, decides to go undercover to uncover the truth behind declining sales and poor employee morale. What he finds is far worse than he expected: neglect, corruption, and a culture poisoned by greed. But Ethan's journey is not just about tearing down what's broken. It's about rebuilding something better. Stay tuned to find out how true leadership can restore a company's soul. At Eco-Style Living, the flagship store stood as a symbol of success, its sleek design and eco-friendly products earning admiration in the bustling city. But despite its outward charm, a troubling truth lurked behind the minimalist walls. Ethan Carter, the CEO and founder, had always prided himself on building a brand that prioritized sustainability and integrity. Yet, as he observed from his office, something didn't sit right. Recent reports from his senior management team highlighted growing concerns: declining sales, high employee turnover, and a culture that seemed increasingly disconnected from the company's values. Despite the brand's image of eco-conscious luxury, the inner workings of eco-style living were showing signs of decay. Employees were disengaged, the morale was low, and rumors of discontent were mounting. When a key staff member, Grace, broke down during a routine meeting about budget cuts, it became impossible for Ethan to ignore the signs of a deep-rooted problem. To make matters worse, he overheard a conversation about poor working conditions that the corporate team had conveniently overlooked. Ethan, unable to reconcile his vision for the company with the reality unfolding within, made a life-changing decision. He would go undercover in his own company, disguised as a new hire, to see the true state of the store firsthand. His mission was clear: uncover the issues, understand the root cause of the dissatisfaction, and bring about real change. What he didn't expect was just how much of the company's soul had been lost in the name of profit and expediency. Ethan knew that the only way to truly understand what was happening behind the scenes at Eco-Style Living was to immerse himself in the day-to-day operations. The thought of stepping into the store as a regular employee, no title, no recognition, was intimidating, but it was the only way to see the company through the eyes of those who were feeling the strain. He called his trusted assistant, Mia, who helped him set up the entire operation. With a new identity in place, Jake, a fresh hire from out of town, Ethan carefully planned his appearance. He swapped his usual business attire for a casual, slightly worn outfit that would blend in with the store's younger, trendier workforce. The new name, a simple backstory of starting fresh in the city after relocating, was the perfect cover. The hardest part, however, would be leaving behind the comfort of his CEO status and becoming just another employee. When Ethan arrived at Eco-Style Living's flagship store, the chic, minimalist design that once symbolized innovation now felt like a cold, distant reminder of what had been lost. The team was busy but distracted, their focus clearly not on the task at hand. He could sense the tension the moment he stepped through the door, employees moving quickly, avoiding eye contact, and generally treating their tasks like a rote routine. His first introduction was with the store manager, Olivia, who didn't seem to notice anything out of the ordinary as she handed him his apron and instructed him to shadow one of the senior employees. Olivia's impersonal demeanor and lack of warmth were a stark contrast to the community spirit that had once been the foundation of Eco-Style Living. As Jake, Ethan quietly observed, taking mental notes of the way employees interacted, or rather, didn't, interact with each other. The customers seemed to be the only source of energy in the store, but even their satisfaction appeared surface level, as if they were just another transaction. The real work, the heart of the company, was missing, and Ethan knew he had to dig deeper. It was clear now that the problems went far beyond what he had read in the reports. The company's culture was sick, and Ethan was about to see just how deep the infection went. Ethan's first day undercover at Eco-Style Living opened his eyes to the dysfunction festering beneath the store's polished exterior. As Jake, he was quickly swept into the daily grind, performing menial tasks like restocking shelves and assisting customers. But it was the subtle moments between tasks that told him everything he needed to know. His trainer, Mia, a quiet and exhausted employee in her mid-20s, Seemed as though she had lost any passion for the job long ago. She moved mechanically through her responsibilities, offering no words of encouragement, just completing her tasks as efficiently as possible. Ethan couldn't help but notice the lack of camaraderie among the staff. There was no team spirit, no shared sense of purpose. Instead, employees were clearly isolated, each absorbed in their individual roles, avoiding conversation or any real interaction. When Mia mentioned a recent staff meeting, she did so with a resigned tone, as if the promises made at the meeting had already been forgotten. There was a sense of burnout hanging in the air. Ethan overheard a conversation in the break room that only added to his concerns. Two employees, Rachel and Luis, were quietly discussing their dwindling hours and how they were forced to pick up the slack for missing shifts. Rachel muttered that Olivia had been pressuring her to work unpaid overtime to meet sales targets, a violation of company policy. Luis, clearly distressed, whispered about how he had witnessed product quality being compromised in an effort to keep up with demand. Ethan's heart sank. These weren't isolated incidents. The rot was pervasive. The longer he stayed in the store, the more he realized that the employees were afraid of speaking up, of challenging the status quo, and of the heavy-handed leadership that had squeezed the life out of eco-style living. As the day wore on, Ethan felt an overwhelming sense of helplessness. The passion that had once made eco-style living a leader in eco-friendly design had been replaced by fear and desperation, as the company's core values, once rooted in authenticity and community, had been lost somewhere in the pursuit of profit. Ethan left the store that evening feeling more determined than ever to uncover the full extent of the problem, but also realizing how difficult the road ahead would be. Ethan Caldwell had never been one to shy away from difficult decisions. As the founder of Eco-Style Living, he had built his company on principles of sustainability, quality, and transparency, but as he scrolled through scathing customer reviews and internal complaints that had somehow never reached his desk, Ethan realized something critical. His brand was in danger of collapsing under the weight of its own success. Reports from middle management painted a rosy picture, filled with sales figures and awards. But the harsh reality, whispered by employees and disgruntled customers alike, was impossible to ignore. It was clear that the polished reports from his executives were hiding something far darker, something he could only uncover by immersing himself in the environment he had unintentionally neglected. Ethan resolved to go undercover, disguising himself as a new sales associate at the flagship Eco-Style Living store located in the bustling downtown district. It was a sleek, upscale location that drew high-profile clientele and casual shoppers alike, meant to represent everything the brand stood for. But now, Ethan feared it had become a hollow facade. With his assistant Julia helping to arrange the details, Ethan assumed the identity of Ben Carter, a recently hired floor associate. Gone were the tailored suits and minimalist luxury watches. Instead, he donned the standard uniform of the retail staff. An understated green polo with the company logo embroidered on the chest, dark jeans, and comfortable sneakers. Julia ensured his paperwork looked legitimate, including a fictitious resume detailing years of retail experience in smaller stores. Ethan's own team was kept completely unaware of his true identity. As he prepared for his first day, Ethan felt a rush of nervous energy he hadn't experienced since launching the company. He wasn't just stepping out of his comfort zone, he was abandoning it entirely. The man who once ruled eco-style living from a sleek, glass-walled office was now about to experience his brand from the ground floor. Ethan knew his mission was clear: to understand the root of the problems, rebuild trust, and ensure his vision was reflected not only in marketing campaigns, but in every interaction within his stores. Ethan's first day at Eco-Style Living's flagship store was a jarring experience. As Ben Carter, he arrived early, only to be greeted with a hasty, indifferent orientation by Alex, the store manager, whose tone suggested impatience rather than genuine guidance. The store's aesthetics were pristine: sleek bamboo displays, minimalist shelving lined with handcrafted eco-friendly decor, and glass walls allowing natural light to pour in. Yet beneath the serene exterior, tension simmered. Alex barely looked Ethan in the eye, rattling off procedures as if checking off a mental list. When Ethan asked about his schedule and responsibilities, Alex handed him a clipboard with vague instructions and told him to just figure it out. As Ethan settled into the day's tasks, He quickly noticed the cracks in the operation. More experienced employees like Mira, a soft-spoken woman with an eye for interior design, moved about their duties with robotic precision, eyes downcast and shoulders tense. Despite her expertise, Mira's suggestions were routinely dismissed by Alex, who seemed more concerned with sales quotas than creativity or employee input. Ethan also witnessed how minor mistakes were blown out of proportion. A cashier named Josh was berated for misplacing a receipt, even as Alex failed to provide him with adequate training. Conversations among employees were brief and guarded, as if everyone feared their words might be twisted against them. During his lunch break, Ethan tried to engage a few colleagues in casual conversation, but they responded with wary nods and vague pleasantries. The atmosphere was oppressive, stifling creativity and collaboration, the very values Ethan had founded eco-style living upon. As the hours passed, he saw how customer interactions were equally strained. Overworked employees attempted to juggle multiple tasks, their smiles increasingly strained and their words hurried. Ethan noted the shift rotations were haphazard, with Alex abruptly changing schedules and denying requests for reasonable adjustments. Employee morale was visibly low, and it became clear that the problem wasn't just about management's indifference. It was about a culture of neglect that had been allowed to fester. By the end of the day, Ethan's optimism had been replaced by frustration and concern. What he had witnessed wasn't merely a lapse in management, it was a systemic failure that threatened everything eco-style living was meant to represent. As Ethan continued his undercover work at eco-style living, the deeper issues became painfully evident. The pressure from Alex to meet increasingly unrealistic sales targets was unrelenting, trickling down and suffocating the entire team. Instead of fostering creativity and collaboration, the store's leadership seemed obsessed with metrics and quotas. Ethan watched as employees like Mira were pushed to upsell products even when it didn't align with the customer's needs or preferences. Alex's fixation on numbers left little room for genuine customer service, turning each interaction into a mechanical transaction. Ethan saw how Mira's enthusiasm waned with each passing day, her eyes dulling under the weight of endless directives and dismissals. She wasn't alone. Josh, the cashier, who had been scolded on Ethan's first day, was now visibly anxious every time Alex walked past. The manager's presence was like a dark cloud, and his criticism came swiftly and sharply, regardless of whether the issue was minor or justified. The lack of proper training exacerbated the situation. Ethan learned from Josh that new hires were often thrown into the deep end with little guidance, their mistakes punished rather than corrected. When Ethan tried to ask questions or request feedback on his own tasks, Alex's responses were brusque and dismissive. "Just focus on selling," was a phrase Ethan heard repeatedly, like a mantra of mediocrity. Breaks were frequently cut short, and overtime was expected but rarely acknowledged, much less compensated. The employees were exhausted, both mentally and physically, from the constant pressure to perform without support or recognition. When Ethan attempted to suggest improvements to the workflow, Alex brushed him off with a sneer, his disdain for creativity palpable. Underneath the polished surface of eco-style living, the workplace culture was withering. Ethan's frustration grew as he realized the very principles he had built the company on, innovation, employee well-being, and environmental stewardship, had been reduced to mere marketing slogans. This wasn't just poor management, it was systemic neglect. And the more Ethan observed, the more certain he became that the problem began with Alex's leadership. Or rather, his complete lack of it. Ethan's undercover journey at eco-style living reached a critical juncture when he stumbled upon a series of discrepancies in the store's inventory and sales reports. During a quiet morning shift, Mira confided in him about her suspicion that Alex was manipulating sales numbers to cover up missing inventory. "He always finds some excuse to blame us," she whispered, eyes darting nervously toward the manager's office. "But things keep going missing, and it's never accounted for." Intrigued and alarmed, Ethan began examining the records himself, cross-referencing recent transactions with the digital logs accessible on the store's outdated system. What he discovered was staggering. High-end items listed as sold were mysteriously missing from the inventory with no corresponding payments recorded. Worse yet, Alex appeared to be manipulating returns, registering expensive pieces as faulty and then selling them off the books to private buyers. Ethan's stomach twisted with anger and disbelief. The very integrity of his brand was being compromised, and his own employees were being blamed for the resulting financial gaps. As Ethan delved deeper, he found evidence that Alex had been coercing certain staff members into participating in the scheme, threatening to reduce their hours or even terminate them if they didn't comply. Mira admitted tearfully that she had been forced to underreport her sales to help Alex balance the books after one of his under-the-table deals fell through. The revelation left Ethan reeling. This wasn't just poor management or a lack of leadership. This was outright corruption. Alex had been using eco-style living as his personal cash cow, exploiting the brand's reputation for quality and ethics while systematically destroying the morale of the staff. Ethan knew then that confronting Alex wasn't enough. The damage extended far beyond the financial discrepancies. It had seeped into the very soul of the store, eroding trust and leaving employees fearful and disillusioned. With his evidence piling up, Ethan realized the time for observation had ended. If he wanted to salvage eco-style living, he would have to act decisively and dismantle the toxic culture that Alex had built from the ground up. The moment of reckoning came faster than Ethan anticipated. Armed with evidence of Alex's manipulation of inventory records, coercion of employees, and blatant disregard for the company's values, Ethan decided it was time to confront the rot head-on. During a busy Friday afternoon, when Alex's arrogance seemed to peak along with sales traffic, Ethan approached him in the back office. "Alex, we need to talk. Now," he said, his tone firm and unyielding. Alex looked up with a dismissive smirk, ready to wave Ethan off as just another underling, but something in Ethan's gaze made him pause. Ethan calmly laid out his findings: missing inventory, falsified sales records, coerced employees, all presented in meticulous detail. Each sheet of evidence hit the desk like a hammer. Alex's confidence faltered, his expression shifting from annoyance to panic. "You think you can walk in here and accuse me of something you don't understand?" Alex snapped, his voice quivering with a mixture of anger and fear. "You're just a temp. You don't know how this place runs." Ethan leaned forward, his eyes locked onto Alex's. "I know exactly how this place runs. And I know you've been running it straight into the ground." As Ethan continued, he revealed his true identity. Ethan Carter, founder and CEO of Eco-Style Living. The color drained from Alex's face as he realized who he had been exploiting. Ethan's voice grew colder. "You took advantage of my staff, stole from my company, and drove away talented, loyal employees with your toxic leadership. That ends today." Ethan's words were not just a dismissal of Alex's behavior. They were a declaration of a new beginning. The confrontation ended with Alex's immediate termination, escorted out of the store by security. Ethan's authority was no longer hidden behind a name tag. It was out in the open, and his commitment to restoring Eco-Style Living's integrity was clear. As the door closed behind Alex, Ethan glanced around the room. The remaining employees watched with a mixture of shock, relief, and hope. Ethan knew his work was far from over, but for the first time he felt like he was making real progress. The removal of Alex from Eco-Style Living's flagship store was only the first step in Ethan's plan to restore the company's values and rebuild trust. He spent the following days meeting with employees one-on-one, listening to their concerns, frustrations, and hopes. Ethan made it clear that he wasn't there to discipline or criticize. He was there to understand. Employees like Harper and Luis, who had endured Alex's intimidation for months, spoke candidly about their experiences. Harper admitted she had been considering quitting, her passion for design and merchandising stifled by constant criticism and unrealistic deadlines. Luis revealed how Alex's favoritism had divided the team, leaving him to shoulder double shifts while others skirted responsibilities with impunity. Their stories weren't just complaints, they were a roadmap to fixing what had gone so terribly wrong. Understanding that communication had been a fundamental flaw in the company's structure, Ethan introduced an open-door policy, ensuring employees could voice their concerns without fear of retaliation. To reinforce this commitment, he set up an anonymous feedback system, where staff could report issues or suggest improvements directly to the corporate office. Ethan also made himself visible and accessible, spending time on the floor each day rather than retreating to the office. He wanted his presence to be reassuring, not intimidating. During a staff meeting held the following week, Ethan addressed everyone from sales associates to designers and back-end support. "This company was built on creativity, collaboration, and respect," he said, his voice calm but resolute. "Somewhere along the way, we lost sight of that, but we're going to bring it back, and it starts now with all of you." He acknowledged the mistakes made by management and vowed to ensure that eco-style living would not only embrace sustainability in its products, but also in its workplace culture. Ethan announced new policies designed to support employees' well-being, including fairer shift scheduling, transparent promotions, and paid mental health days. The message was clear: they were valued as much as the customers they served. Seeing their boss roll up his sleeves and work alongside them wasn't just a gesture, it was proof that Ethan's promises were real. When a shipment came in late one evening, Ethan stayed to help unpack, stacking boxes and organizing inventory. At first, employees were stunned by the sight of their CEO lifting heavy cartons and arranging shelves. But as the days went on, they saw Ethan's hands-on approach, not as a spectacle, but as genuine commitment. Harper's creativity began to flourish once more, her display concepts praised rather than nitpicked. Luis, now confident he wouldn't be punished for speaking out, suggested improvements to inventory tracking that Ethan promptly implemented. The staff's smiles became more genuine, their energy no longer dampened by the toxic pressure that had once dominated their work environment. Customers, too, noticed the difference. They remarked on the friendlier service, the vibrant new displays, the warmth that now accompanied every transaction. Sales slowly began to climb, but more importantly, the atmosphere of dread had been replaced by one of optimism. Ethan knew there was still work to be done, but for the first time in months, eco-style living felt like a company worth fighting for, and he was ready to keep fighting, shoulder to shoulder, with his team. Rebuilding eco-style living's flagship store wasn't a one-time fix. It was a continuous journey. Ethan quickly realized that while removing Alex had lifted a heavy weight from the team, true cultural change required persistence and consistency. He spent the next several months implementing the policies he had promised, but more importantly, ensuring those policies were embraced at every level of the company. The feedback system became a cornerstone of his strategy, providing valuable insights into what was working and what still needed improvement. Ethan made sure every suggestion was reviewed, acknowledging valid points and making adjustments where necessary. He held monthly staff meetings to discuss progress, celebrate wins, and address ongoing challenges. This transparency helped employees feel like their voices genuinely mattered. Ethan also initiated a mentorship program, pairing seasoned staff members like Luis with newer recruits to encourage collaboration and skill development. Harper, who had once considered quitting, flourished under the guidance of a senior designer Ethan had brought in to help restructure the merchandising process. With her creativity finally recognized and valued, she contributed innovative ideas that refreshed the store's aesthetic, drawing positive reviews from customers and critics alike. Ethan continued to work alongside the staff, often popping in unannounced to assist during busy hours or simply to catch up with his employees. His presence was no longer intimidating, it was reassuring. Despite the improvements, Ethan knew that old habits die hard. Some employees who had been loyal to Alex's tyrannical style remained skeptical, their resentment simmering beneath polite smiles. Others struggled to adjust to the new standards of communication and accountability. Ethan addressed this by offering training sessions focused on teamwork, conflict resolution, and stress management, recognizing that a supportive culture required skills as much as goodwill. Sales gradually climbed, and employee turnover dropped significantly. Ethan saw these metrics not just as indicators of success, but as evidence that eco-style living was becoming the inclusive, empowering environment he had always envisioned. But he wasn't naive. He knew the work was far from over. Building a healthy culture meant maintaining vigilance, adapting to new challenges, and never taking progress for granted. As the company continued to grow, Ethan committed himself to ensuring that eco-style living's values were reflected not only in its products, but also in the way it treated its people. Standing in the newly revitalized flagship store, Ethan couldn't help but feel a sense of fulfillment that went beyond profits or accolades. The soft glow of natural light filtering through the skylights now highlighted the fresh, lively displays meticulously crafted by a team that had rediscovered its passion. Luis was cheerfully instructing a new hire on the finer points of customer engagement, while Harper's stunning, nature-inspired centerpiece drew admiration from customers the moment they walked in. What struck Ethan most was the atmosphere, one that buzzed not with the forced energy of survival, but with genuine creativity and cooperation. Conversations flowed freely, laughter punctuated the workday, and the harsh, nervous glances that once accompanied Alex's approach were gone. The transformation hadn't been instant, nor had it been easy. Ethan had spent countless nights questioning his own decisions, wondering if he could truly bring his vision of eco-style living to life. But as he watched his team thrive, he knew it had been worth every moment of doubt. Leadership, he realized, wasn't about imposing authority from above. It was about listening, learning, and empowering others to reach their potential. For too long, the company had focused on aesthetics, on crafting beautiful products for pristine homes. Yet the true beauty of eco-style living, Ethan saw now, lay in the people who shaped it every day. Reflecting on his journey, Ethan recognized that the company's greatest strength had always been its people. The downfall of the store hadn't been about sales or competition, it had been about a culture left neglected. Through his undercover experience, he had come to understand the importance of nurturing that culture, with the same dedication eco-style applied to its products. Authenticity, kindness, and resilience. These were the values that would carry the company forward. As Ethan walked past Harper's display, he paused to admire a handwritten note she had pinned beside the arrangement. Inspired by the people who make this place feel like home. Smiling, he continued his tour of the store, his confidence no longer rooted in spreadsheets or marketing campaigns, but in the vibrant, united team that was finally thriving. Eco-style's soul, once lost, had been found again. Ethan stood before the Eco-Style Living team at their quarterly meeting, the largest gathering since the company's restructuring began. The flagship store was thriving once more, but he knew this journey was about more than just a single location. It was about rebuilding an entire culture from the ground up. Ethan addressed the room with a calm, assured voice, his gaze moving across faces that now held hope rather than weariness. Eco-style living has always been about sustainability, he began, but for too long we only applied that principle to our products, not our people, not our practices. His words resonated, drawing nods from those who had weathered the worst of the turmoil. Over the past months, Ethan had enacted policies aimed at fairness and collaboration. Salaries were adjusted to reflect the true value of the employee's work, while a newly implemented mentorship program allowed seasoned staff to guide new hires without fear of being overshadowed. Team-building workshops, flexible scheduling, and mental health support initiatives were all part of the overhaul. Harper had even been commissioned to design a community garden within the store's courtyard, a living testament to the company's commitment to both nature and nurture. Eco-style was no longer just a brand, it was becoming a community. Despite the progress, Ethan understood that real change would require ongoing vigilance and humility. He couldn't simply declare victory and return to his office with the assumption that all issues had been resolved. Instead, he pledged to maintain an open-door policy, holding regular listening sessions with employees and responding to their feedback with transparency and integrity. Ethan had learned the hard way that a business could not thrive on aesthetics alone. It needed strong roots, and those roots were the people who made eco-style what it was. As he concluded his speech, Ethan's final words hung in the air like a promise. We're not just aiming for a profitable future, we're striving for a sustainable one, where everyone has the chance to grow. The applause that followed wasn't polite or routine, it was genuine, a shared recognition that they were building something enduring. Ethan left the meeting with a renewed sense of purpose, determined to keep eco-style living flourishing for generations to come. The story of eco-style living teaches a valuable lesson about leadership, accountability, and the power of rebuilding a broken culture. Ethan's undercover experience revealed that even the most polished brands can suffer from deep-rooted issues when leadership becomes disconnected from the people who keep the business alive. True sustainability goes beyond eco-friendly products. It extends to nurturing a healthy, supportive work environment where employees feel valued and respected. By stepping out of his corporate role and working alongside his team, Ethan learned that leadership isn't about issuing directives from above. It's about understanding struggles from the ground up, addressing corruption, reshaping policies, and fostering open communication were necessary steps in restoring integrity and morale. The lesson is clear: a company can only thrive when its foundation, its people, is strong. Ethan's journey also underscores the importance of empathy and collaboration. His willingness to listen, adapt, and share responsibility inspired real change. Ultimately, EcoStyle Living's transformation shows that lasting success requires not only financial growth, but also genuine care for those who make that growth possible. A sustainable future isn't built overnight. It's cultivated through ongoing dedication to fairness, integrity, and human connection.